All right. So before we get into some particulars, I'm going to also present to you a number of articles online that you can go deeper if you want to go deeper into this topic. I think there's a number of, I found quite a lot of material, very easy to find online by good sources, serious Orthodox Christians. I'll start there tonight before we jump into just a few excerpts from some of that material. But our main focus tonight is going to be just reading through and commenting and talking about the booklet published by the Uncut Mountain Press, The Helmet of Salvation. That's what we're going to put on the screen in a minute, a little booklet. It's the first of many booklets from Uncut Mountain Press. This is number one of our series of booklets, just like you've seen in other places like from Conciliar Press, now Ancient Faith Media, I guess. And we'll read through that, we'll comment on it, and then we'll open it up for questions. But before we get there, let me just make you aware of, on this topic, what's available already if you have questions or there's been challenges. And there have been some articles and challenges to this practice in this very secularized land of America, which unfortunately even Orthodox Christians get infected and affected by these matters. And so there's some of these are more of an apology and a defense of the practice. The first is from orthodoxethos.com on the veiling of Orthodox Christian women according to the fathers in the history of the church. So you go to orthodoxethos.com. You can see it on the screen. Hopefully everybody can see that on the screen. They can. By the way, everybody can hear me. It looks like everybody's seeing me, hearing me. I don't see anybody saying, Father, I can't hear you. So we're good to go on that. And go to orthodoxethos.com and check that out. A very good, simple and straightforward, but very good presentation on the basics of the question of the head covering. There's actually a very interesting prayer there. We're going to go there in a minute and just look what St. John Chrysostom has to say, who's a very authoritative and representative of the patristic witness on this topic. But there also you can read a special prayer that is found in Evkollogion, the prayer book for priests, for the wearing of the veil, the head covering for the woman. Very interesting. It's in the liturgical, the prayers of the priests going back hundreds of years. Now, another article which I recommend is Father John Whiteford, Uncovering the Truth, Head Coverings, and Revisionist Biblical Interpretation. That's a response. A couple years ago, he's given a response to a particular priest in the, I think, Greek Archdiocese, who was basically saying, was revising the longstanding patristic witness on this and challenging it. And, his arguments were basically that, well, this only applies to married women. Then he goes on and he's kind of just makes it irrelevant step by step. So that's a very good response if you want to see that kind of back and forth. There's another article by a woman who I'm going to quote from tonight as well. Very interesting article, very insightful. On Account of the Angels, Why I Cover My Head, orthodoxinfo.com, Praxis Head Coverings. And let me actually put a few of these links right into our Crowdcast chat. That's the first of it. Actually, that is what I have not yet said, and that's this page, Orthodox Christian Theology. That is this page here, Craig Patrick Trulia. He did a live stream and talked about the patristic teaching, but particularly referenced the new martyr Daniel Sisoyev and what he has to say about this matter. That's Orthodox Christian Theology, and you can find that head covering Corinthians 11 and Orthodoxy. Let me give you the link also for this, which is over on orthodoxinfo.com, and for all of our Crowdcast folks. And you can share that over in our Telegram channel as well. This is the link for the article on orthodoxchristian.com by Father John Whiteford. For those who aren't here, don't see the links, you can see them on the screen, and then when we stop, you can watch the review. You can find them. Here's the link for the orthodoxethos.com article. Let me paste that as well for everyone. And so you can continue your examination. It doesn't take long. You got half an hour. You can read probably all of these articles I just posted. There's several more articles. I didn't have a chance to really examine them, so I'm not going to suggest them because I'm not sure if there's anything kind of a little bit off, but that's to get you started. But I think the answer, it's really kind of straightforward. I don't think it's a big debate. Let's start with St. John Chrysostom. First of all, no, let's start with the scriptural passage. We'll look at the basis for the practice of head covering in the apostle himself. And so here is the scriptural passage. This is 11 Corinthians 2 to 16. 1 Corinthians 11, 2 to 16. And we're going to just quickly read through this. Again, we're not going to defend the practice. We don't think it needs defending, but we will point out some key points. And then we'll go to the homily, which we think is fantastic, from Bishop Alexei. Reading the Apostles' commentary. Now, I praise you, brethren, that ye remember me in all things and keep the ordinances as I deliver them to you. But I would have you know that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Christ is God. Just a brief thought on that. This is clearly showing the hierarchy of things in terms and the order rather of things in the church for the sake of salvation, for the sake of obedience, and this is not a question of obviously the Son and the Father are equal. They're the three persons of the Trinity are all God. So this is not a inequality, but it's a question of order and pointing to the obedience of Christ that we also imitate. And so the order between man and woman is established, very clear in Genesis. And all of this is not a question of power, raw power, but it's a question of obedience, which is salvific, and this is where I think the contemporary feminist, for lack of it's very this movement and whatever it's become over the last 100 years, is multifaceted. But just for simplicity's sake, feminism is really looking at this in terms of power and authority in a worldly sense. The Lord says clearly to his apostles, don't be like the world in the way that they exercise authority over their subjects. Rather, authority in the church is service. Authority in the church is crucifixion and sacrifice and suffering and all the rest. That's true authority, and Christ gives us the example on the cross. So to get out of the worldly mindset, otherwise you're going to make a mess of the scriptures. Now, and that's really the heart of the problem today in the 20th century. As Patrick points out in his live stream, universally, even outside of Orthodoxy in many places, if you go back to the 20s, 30s, and 40s, right after the World War II, I think that's really where things started to unravel in many places around the world. And I can say from my own experience and the witness that I received from those in the village outside of Thessaloniki, up in the mountains where I was a priest for about 12 years, that it was right up into and even shortly after World War II, that it was universal that women wore head coverings, again, not just in church, but in throughout their day. Not, it wasn't a legalistic application, but that was the norm, and nobody really questioned it. As you'll see, that was the norm certainly in the patristic witness as well. So, to go on, the Lord, the apostle says, every man praying or prophesying having his head covered dishonoreth his head. But every woman that prayeth or prophesieth with her head uncovered dishonoreth her head. Again, it's a symbol of subjection and obedience ultimately to Christ. We talk a lot about this here in Orthodox ethos. The importance of obedience is the center of everything. Read the patristic ascetic struggles of all the saints, especially our contemporary elders like Elder Joseph Hesychus, is the heart of what it means to be a monastic. And if there's no obedience and a disposition to obedience, then Elder Joseph said there is no progress spiritually. They won't make progress. So there's no question that the heart of our salvation is the question of obedience, which is very misunderstood today. But it's obedience to Christ always, in and through the church, in and through the priest, the elder, the bishop. And so that's what this is pointing to. It has the presupposition, of course, that the people are Orthodox Christians faithful, at least ecclesiastically speaking, when we're talking about the Orthodox faith, and when someone departs from the Orthodox faith, a bishop or a priest, then the obedience no longer reaches Christ. Now we're following something else. We're following a heretical teacher. We're following a heretical teacher. So yes, always at the core, but with certain presuppositions. But this is the heart of the life of the church. If we're not living out this mystery of Christ, which is inseparable from the mystery of obedience and what he did for us and showed us, and all of the saints, faithfulness, in other words, to the end, says those who remain faithful then will be saved, then we ourselves have yet to really begin the spiritual life and make progress ourselves. So it's really important. And this is what he's pointing to here. This is what the head covering symbolizes. For if a man not be covered, let her also be a woman. Sorry, if a woman not be covered, verse 6, let her also be shorn. But if it be a shame for a woman to be shorn or shaven, which up until our day it was a terrible shame for a woman to shave her head. What was the singer from Ireland that recently apparently died? Either, not really sure how she died, maybe suicide, maybe not, but she was famous for her shaved head. I mean, this was something unheard of. It was a shame. It was clearly throughout the world not seen as an honor for a woman. Her hair was universally seen as something that would adorn her. So he says it's a shame if she's not covered. If she's not covered, let her be shorn. But if it be a shame for a woman to be shorn, then let her be covered. So he's saying this is the options here, and obviously you're going to follow that which is honorable. For a man indeed ought not to cover his head, for as much as he is the image and glory of God, but the woman is the glory of man. We might get into this. I haven't really looked at the patristic witness about this particular passage, but there's some explanation. For instance, people ask me, a little off topic, but the same answer basically is given here. Why do priests wear head coverings? Monks wear veils. Priests wear their skufo or their kalamavki. Why do men do that? Well, there's also exceptions in terms of long hair. For instance, the Lord himself is pictured always in the icons with long hair. Why is that? It is because he had taken a vow of the Nazarene, for example. That's one reason. And so there's exceptions to this rule. It's not a legalistic rule of, well, let's measure the hair. Is it this long or that long? It's a symbol. It's a symbol. And that's what's being communicated. But let's continue on. Verse 8, for the man is not of the woman, but the woman of the man. He's talking about Genesis and, of course, the order of creation, who came first and from which a woman is in Genesis. Neither was the man created for the woman, but the woman for the man. For this cause ought the woman to have power on her head because of the angels. We'll talk about that in a minute. Nevertheless, neither is the man without the woman, nor neither the woman without the man in the Lord. So, ultimately, the image is inseparable, man and woman together. That's the human person, or the image of the human person, the humanity. And so, this is not about power over. It's in terms of the worldly power, but it's a question of roles, question of identity, question of submission to Christ ultimately. For as the woman is of the man, even so is the man also by the woman, but all things of God. Judging yourselves, is it comely that a woman pray unto God uncovered? Doth not even nature itself teach you that if a man have long hair, it is a shame unto him? But if a woman have long hair, it is glory for her. Her hair is given for her for a covering. But if any man seem to be contentious, we have no such custom, neither in the churches of God. This is one of the more important lines because it's been spread abroad erroneously that what St. Paul's talking about here is some particular tradition only among the Corinthians, but he says at the end of his discussion of this presentation, telling to the Corinthians that this is the order of things in the church and outside the church, as St. John Chrysostom says, that this is universal. We have no such custom other than this. This is what we do universally in the Christian church at the time of the Apostle Paul. All right, so that's a quick read. We'll look at some patristic texts now in terms of the interpretation. Let's go right to St. John Chrysostom first and foremost. And we're going to be we're looking at the Orthodox Ethos article by Subdeacon Nectarios. Scriptural commentaries of St. John Chrysostom, and there's many others. St. Augustine also has some commentary in this. The 5th century Patriarch of Constantinople and the author of our Divine Liturgy give us very in-depth and clear explanation of what St. Paul means when he commands women to have their heads covered. St. John Chrysostom writes, but the woman St. Paul, commands to be at all times covered. Wherefore, also having said, every woman that prayeth or prophesieth with her head unveiled dishonoreth her head. He stayed not at this point only, but also proceeded to say, for it is one and the same thing as if she were shaven. So if you're praying without your head covered, and for St. John, if you're even in the public without your head covered in those days, this is as if you were shaven. In other words, it's a shame for a woman. But if it to be shaven is always dishonorable, it is plain too that being uncovered is always a reproach. And not even with this only was he content, but he added again, saying, the woman ought to have a sign of authority on her head because of the angels. He signifies that not at the time of prayer only, but also continually she ought to be covered. If a woman is not veiled, let her also be shorn. But if it's a shame for a woman to be shorn or shaven, let her be veiled. Covered, in other words. Thus, in the beginning, he simply requires that the head be not bare. But as he proceeds, he intimates both the continuance of the rule, saying, for it is one and the same thing as if she were shaven, and the keeping of it with all care and diligence. For he said not merely covered, but covered over. Ude gar kaliptiste, ala kata kaliptiste. So this Greek term here, kata kaliptiste, right? So that's added to the word. This is the word kaliptiste, to be covered. And then when you add this, your emphasis, and you're saying more of like a total covering. So it's not just a covering, but be covered over, meaning that she be carefully wrapped up on every side. And by reducing it to an absurdity, he appeals to their shame, saying by way of severe reprimand, but if she not be covered, let her also be shorn. As if he had said, if thou cast away the covering appointed by the law of God, cast away likewise that appointed by nature. So the law and nature both point to the universal practice of Christians that women cover their heads. And at that time, certainly that was throughout the day. And we'll talk about that, and we probably have some questions about that. What about today? Are we saying here the patristic witness is that women cover their heads all the time on the streets? Immediately you can hear in the Western world, but that's what the Muslims do. You're going to make our women look like Muslims. We'll look at that and talk about that. And there's a pastoral question also at stake there. We'll come back to that. As we can see from the commentary by St. John Chrysostom, it was expected of all women to be covered not only during liturgical periods of prayer, but at all times. St. Augustine of Hippo also says, to those who belong to the world have also to consider how they may in these things please their wives, they be husbands, and their husbands be wives, with this limitation, that it is not becoming even in married women to uncover their hair, since the apostle commands women to keep their heads covered. So we could go on. There's other interesting historical material here that's cited in this article. And there's a prayer that I mentioned earlier in the Evkologion, which I'm not going to read, but I think if you're interested to read it, it's very interesting. It's, of course, the prayer book used by priests, and it's called The Binding Up the Head of the Hair of a Woman Can Be Found, etc. So there's manuscripts that point to this. But we're not going to stay there. We want to get to the article by Bishop Alexei. So again, I'm not trying to make a complete defense of this practice, but to give you basic patristic witness as to it's taken for granted among the fathers, especially you see St. John Chrysostom. Let me also share with you some insights from this article by Unorthodox Info, which I think is interesting. Let me bring that up on the screen. It's called On Account of the Angels, Why I Cover My Head. I'm going to jump right to this chapter here, this part here. The church taught that it mattered to the angels whether women cover their heads. But why? Was the covering a sign of submission to her husband, as some commentaries say, or a cultural statement of inferiority, as one woman told me in explaining why she would not wear a veil? Those are the kind of things you hear today which are totally unfounded. A friend and former dean of a Lutheran seminary in Norway, Hauken Haas, pointed to another possible reason. This is a woman who was talking about her whole journey to Orthodoxy, and so she's also talking about some pre-Orthodox days and non-Orthodox sources. And she says, he looked up 1 Corinthians 11:10 in Greek. Therefore, the woman shall have exousia. Exousia is right or power or authority on her head for the sake of the angels. The word exousia, said Hakon, also occurs in John 1:12. As many as received him, to them he gave exousia, to become children of God, power, authority, to those who believe in his name. And so this is very interesting, the use there and there. What does this mean? Well, St. Paul, was he saying that the head covering, it was an outward sign of my authority as a child, a female child of God, recognized by the angels? Was it a question then of this wearing of the veil is a question of authority? And how, again, what is authority in the church but submission, service, sacrifice, the cross? Again, it's turned on its head in the church. This is very important. You have to understand, in the church is not the way of the world. It's not the way of raw power. It's not the way of authority over people. Authority here is when you take your place in order and struggle, picking up your cross and following Christ. Who are the ones in the church that have the authority? The saints. Why? Because they were crucified with Christ. They died, they rose, they lived the mystery of the cross. They were ascetics, they were martyrs. Those are the ones who have authority in the church. So here we're talking about authority. We're talking about the spiritual authority that comes through submission to Christ, obedience, and crucifixion. See how that's so exactly, that's different. It's opposite. It's the upside down of the worldly mindset. So when you hear people in the church, so-called Orthodox Christians, and there's a couple who are very loud today. They're, sociologists and writers on public websites, and they're constantly, pushing a obviously worldly paradigm of authority and power that completely they have yet to step into the mind and the spirit of the church on such basic things. And we're all affected by that. So, we need to hear this. We all need to hear this again and again. So authority here, recognized by the angels, very interesting. We'll talk about that in a minute. Father John Wyford has some interesting things to say about it. She says, it rang so excitingly true. God asked voluntary submission and obedience of his children. I chose to wear the sign of my feminine, as distinguished from masculine, authority. So that's a sign of authority. Not submission in a worldly sense, but submission to Christ, which is authority in the church. I think it's so beautiful and fascinating. So let me go back here and put this on the screen. Here. In her book, Holy Angels, Mother Alexandra writes, the celestial hierarchies are the spiritual reality of ordered creation, the stable patterns in which disruption is unknown. Obedience is characteristic of the angelic realm. I want you to follow step by step. Let's follow closely what she's saying here. She's going to unravel step by step the meaning here of what's going on. Dionysius of Areopagite, Saint Dionysius, great towering patristic authority, influential since the 5th century, I think earlier, but that's what the academics say, only through the 5th century, wrote of 9 orders and hierarchies of celestial beings arranged in 3 choirs. Just a minute. Arranged in 3 choirs. Seraphim and cherubim are in the first, archangels and angels in the third choir closest to us. Without obedience, there is chaos and disorder. What are we living in the world today? Don't you all feel the total chaos and disorder that we're living in? Everybody is, the egotism is at an all-time high. Everybody is independent and free, quote unquote. What kind of freedom it is? It's a kind of enslavement to pride and arrogance. But in any case, we have total disorder and chaos in the world today. We don't even have a sense of the order of man and woman, the boundaries of anything anymore. They're all being washed away. It is a result of total and utter disobedience on many levels, to the church, to God directly, to his commandments, to his scriptures. And it's just a total unraveling of step by step of the order of God, which is based on the obedience and the place that every one of us has. We all have our place. Even it says about the priest and the bishop, especially the bishop, in the typos και topos Christou, the type and the place. Everyone has their place, their role in the church. So when there's disobedience, there's chaos and disorder. St. John Chrysostom speaks of how distinction in male and female dress, and particularly the veiling of a woman, ministers effectively to good order among mankind. Taking off the veil was no small error, said St. John. It is disobedience. It disturbs all things and betrays the gifts of God and casts to the ground the honor bestowed. For to the woman it is of the greatest of honor to preserve her own rank. In the world of feminism, that doesn't sound right. Wait a minute. What do you mean, my own rank? I'm gonna run the corporation. I'm gonna do it. That whole approach, though, although in the world, in the mind of the world, that makes sense, right? In the Orthodox Church, in the Church of Christ, it doesn't make any sense. It's a total disruption and disorder and an overturning of the path and purpose of our life, and which is shown to us by Christ. To some who argued that a woman, by taking off her covering, mounts up to the glory of man, Chrysostom answers, she does not mount up, but rather falls from her own proper honor. How does he say that? Because where is honor found? In submission, in obedience, in picking up the cross, in following after Christ. Since not to abide within our own limits and the laws of God, but to go beyond is not an addition, but a diminution. So that's very interesting. Again, I want you to see how this is the same thing that's happening all over the place in society. It's that you can see the same principle at work in transgender, in feminism, and the variety in the various destruction of the old, quote unquote, old Christian order. You see the same phenomenon working out. Let's read that again. Since not to abide within our own limits and laws of God, is everybody seeing where we're at? Maybe this gets hard to see. There you go. Since not to abide within our own limits and the laws of God, so boundaries laid down by God, the order laid down by God, both in nature and in the law of God, but to go beyond, in other words, to throw off those limits and boundaries. What was that in the garden? What did he do? What did Adam and Eve do? They did exactly that. They threw off the boundaries. What were the boundaries? Don't eat of that tree. What was going on there? He broke the fast. He was disobedient. So going beyond the boundaries, going beyond the limits or the role and the place is a pride and arrogance, which then throws you down and you lose communion. You lose what you have and the image is. So we were talking about abiding. But if you go beyond, it's not an addition, but a diminution, you lose. It's an illusion of what the worldly power, the worldly people, the various isms, and the grabbing of power. It gives this illusion that you're gaining. You have power over other people, but you're actually losing, and you're losing, of course, communion. You're losing. Very good, thank you, John. Diminution. So. Let's continue on. Let's see here. Always emphasizing the equality between man and woman, Chrysostom admonishes the man not to dishonor her who governs next to thyself. So this is not contrary to the worldly mindset, a question of inequality. From their perspective, it may be because they're about power over people. And they don't understand the roles of a man and a woman and how each of the roles play toward their salvation, because both of them fulfill in their own way the same spiritual reality of obedience. Picking up your cross and following the roles are not about authority over, but a mutual governance with different roles. That's the way it should be understood in the church and for man and woman in a marriage and in the church generally. The issue was order, not superiority, inferiority, right? And it says that in the feast on Orthodoxy Sunday, it says each in their varied order keeps the feast. Each in their varied order keeps the feast. All right, so we're going to move on to the next thing I want to share with you, which is just a little paragraph from Father John Whiteford. And we're going to look at, let me go back down to where I need to be. And that is here, authority on the head. Well, actually, we kind of covered that already. But here, the patristic, I want to say the patristic commentary, which is very, you know what? I'm gonna let you read it on your own. I don't want to repeat it. It's going to be somewhat repetitive, which is what we just did. So let's just go. Anybody wants to read that, I recommend that, Orthodox Christian. But let's go to our main text tonight, and let's start there. All right, let's start there. All right. So this is the booklet. How many of you have seen, let me just get a shout out in our crowdcast. How many of you have seen this, read it? Anybody seen it, read it? If it's okay, we're going to go over it. I'm just curious if we got a huge turnout here, a huge number of people who've already seen this. This is a booklet from Orthodox, from Uncut Mountain Press, The Helmet of Salvation by Bishop Alexei of Alaska. How many of you know? Hopefully, a lot of you know Bishop Alexei. He was a higher monk, great schema higher monk from Mount Athos at Caracalla Monastery. Before that, he was at St. Tikhon's, and he was made a bishop by the OCA, I think 4 years ago, maybe, an auxiliary bishop. Now he's the Bishop of Alaska, and he's written a number of other books. In Peace, Let Us Pray to the Lord for Pentecostals, about the question of speaking in tongues, and also another book, Ancient Christian Wisdom and Aaron Beck's Cognitive Therapy. I think that was his PhD thesis in Thessaloniki. So we've titled this homily, Helmet of Salvation, a Defense Against Scandal, Suspicion, and Envy, which is taken from the actual document the actual homily by Bishop Alexei. So I'm going to read through it. I'm going to stop a few times, and I want to comment on a few things which I think are worthy of elaboration. It is always good, always blessed, and always spiritually beneficial to honor in every way that we can the most pure Virgin Theotokos, so full of grace. What especially pleases her is when we strive to imitate her in any way possible. We do this by our commitment to purity. We do this by our commitment to prayer. We do this by our commitment to her Son. This imitation, like all of our Christian actions, must take on flesh, even as our Lord took flesh from her. They must be translated into action, our action that brings our Lord's reaction in the sending of his divine grace that strengthens us and makes us whole. That's salvation, right? Communion and the filling of all of man with the divine energies of God. All Christians are called to honor and love the mother of our beloved Lord. We all pray to her. We all call her blessed. But above all, women who, like her, give birth to children can honor her in a special way. Every Orthodox Christian woman is called to be an icon of the mother of the Lord, and by her way of life, bring the Lord into the midst of her children, her family, and her community at large. Very beautiful reflections from Bishop Alexei. I would add, we talked about this last week. For all of you who were there, I'm sorry I'm repeating myself a bit, but St. Maximus the Confessor, for instance, talks about the Theotokos is, of course, the great example, not the exception that the papal Protestants make her. The great exception. No, she's the great example. And in fact, we're called to be Theotoki, St. Maximus says. We're called to be, and St. Gregory Palamas says the same thing in different ways. We're called to imitate and be like her, to have Christ conceived and born and totally at one with us and are just like she was spiritually, of course. One particularly blessed way, he says, of honoring the Mother of God is by a dedication to the virtue of modesty. Now, I want to stop here and say a word about modesty, because immediately, unfortunately, I think for a lot of people, at least for me when I was growing up, the Protestant ethos, the Protestant mentality that was pretty dominant for a lot of people in America has been, and maybe also Catholicism. I didn't have as experience with that, but is that modesty is something that pertains mainly to the dress, it pertains to externals. It's something that is kind of old fashioned and, nerdy and I don't know what, but there's this real idea that modesty is something that is not for people who are free, people who are, expressive and artistic or whatever. It's just because the examples, for whatever reason, doesn't really matter, of modesty seem to be quantitative, like cover your entire body. That's what modesty means. Of course, that's part of it, of course, but it's not. That's certainly the external and not the spiritual reality of modesty. Modesty in Greek, semnotita, is much broader. I mean, immediately when you say it in Greek, immediately you have this broad, all-encompassing, wonderful virtue that has not really talking about the externals at all. The externals should be almost like a no-brainer. It's not a part of a discussion. Semnotita, it moves to the whole way of being and operating and talking and speaking. It's talking about the spiritual stance of someone, right? How they carry themselves. So I think really it's important that we understand the Mother of God is not modest because she's covered. That's certainly going to happen because that's a part of it's expression of humility. It's expression of not showing off, not flirting, or not the word flirting, but not being, in your face and showing yourself and drawing attention to yourself. That's a part of it. But I really want to just stress modesty in the Orthodox understanding here. It's much broader, much deeper, and it's spiritual as well as external, of course, but it's mainly spiritual, the way you carry yourself. And there are men who are extremely modest. I remember I was at a gathering of clergy. This was 2003, maybe. This was a gathering of very remarkable clergy from Mount Athos and from the monasteries in northern Greece, and we were gathering to talk about the ecclesiastical situation in Greece. It was one of my first meetings with all these clergy. I was just in awe of a lot of them. And I remember one man, to this day, he's such a beautiful soul. He's a hieromonk. He was with Bishop Augustinus Kantiotis. And he stood up and he spoke, and I just was overcome by his modesty. The way he spoke, the way he stood, the way he expressed himself, the way he looked was so impressive. And you say, well, if you look at it externally only and you talk about modesty, you'd be like, well, every priest there had the same clothing. There was all black robes everywhere and black hats. What's going to be modest about one and not about the other? See, so this points, I think, to something we really need to understand. It's really a spiritual reality. When we talk about modesty of the Mother of God, it's not just externals, but it's a spiritual reality. All right, hopefully that's been helpful. Hopefully we'll have some questions about modesty, because I think that's really important for us to understand. All right, let's go back to the text. Modesty is itself one of the fruits of the Spirit enumerated by St. Paul. Modesty is a kindness towards one's neighbor, a humble goodness that provokes neither envy nor desire, and love that thinks more of others than self. That's a great, see how expansive modesty is? And Bishop Alexei points out the spiritual, center of modesty. When we pray in church, we are especially called to modesty. That's really interesting. You go to, think about the people who come who are immodest in church. It's not just that they're not wearing proper clothing, they're not wearing the best clothing, they're not covered, their body is exposed. It's that they're provoking and attracting attention to themselves away from divine liturgy, right? They're a distraction. So when we pray in church, we're especially called to modesty, which enables us to approach God with that humble and contrite heart that he will not despise. It's so much bigger than just, what do you wear? Oh, why do I have to wear that? You hear that, especially young ladies. You say, well, no, that's not appropriate at the monastery. You've got to put on this, that, and the other thing. They don't understand that where the spirit, the spiritual side. It's not just a kind of a pressure to conform or something like that. And if it is, it's a problem. Our Lord himself was modest about his miracles, modest about his speech, modest in his example, modest in the washing of his disciples' feet. So these are all examples of modesty. It's not about his clothing. It was just a given. Nobody even discussed these things today. We have to talk about things that should be obvious. Today we have blessed the headscarves in this holy temple. So this is when the homily was given. They were blessing the headscarves. Probably something like the prayer that you can go and see at the Orthodox Ethos article by Subdeacon Nectarius. In doing so, we have blessed the way that women have been cultivating modesty and honoring the most pure Theotokos, the mother of our Lord, for over 1,000 years. I guess this prayer dates from 1,000 years. I don't know. This has nothing to do with being subservient. This cuts to the heart of what we talked about earlier in our examples. This has nothing oppressive about it. It's about a visible way in which a God-fearing woman can say by her actions, "Behold, the handmaid of the Lord, be it unto me according to thy word," which is the words of the most holy Theotokos to the archangel. But what does the head covering mean? Well, we can start by looking at what it means to cover anything in the context of the church. This is fascinating. I love the way he does this. So let's talk about covering generally. We got all kinds of covers in the church, right? We cover the holy gifts. We cover the chalice, the holy table. The holy chalice is covered by a covering at the great entrance. And the altar is covered by the curtain. Bishops, priests, and deacons are covered by their vestments. Why do we cover the chalice, and why is the curtain a covering for the altar? By the way, there's one of the bad liturgical innovations and practices. You go to churches, I mean, maybe there's some missions that don't have it, but generally when they make conscious decision, they don't have a curtain for the holy altar. Bad innovation for people in America, unfortunately. So why do we cover the chalice, and why is the curtain a covering for the altar? It is because the chalice is holy. It is because the altar is holy. So we cover what is precious, what is honored, and what deserves protection. Isn't that all? That's so beautiful. So different than the worldly, crazy, feminist, insane approach to these things. We're covering it because it's holy. Women are covering their head because they're holy. So we cover what is precious, what is honored, and what deserves protection. And those coverings themselves, sorry for the little bells in the background. I should have turned off those notifications. And those coverings themselves are holy because they serve a holy function. Setting something apart is respected as special, as worthy of reverence, much like the curtain separating the Holy of Holies from the rest of Solomon's temple. This is really important. Holiness literally means to be set apart, to be not of this world, to be set apart. So we're setting these things apart by covering them. We're pointing to their holiness, their function of uniting man to God. So a woman's head covering is not just like these coverings. It is also like these coverings. I think it might be a typo. I don't know. Do we have a typo here, Justin and John? If you're here, people who work for Uncut Mountain Press. When I reread that, I thought maybe this is a typo, but maybe he's also he goes on and says it. I might be wrong about that. Anyway, so it is not just like these coverings. It is such a covering, a vestment that is sacred. This is the only way we can understand why an ancient monastery in Constantinople would accept the gift of the Empress Evdokia's head covering to be used to cover the Holy Gospel. That's interesting. Sorry. And there is nothing more sacred than the gospel. This alone shows the sacredness of the head covering of a God-fearing woman. If you have your mother's or grandmother's headscarf worn in church, keep it and treasure it. A head covering is a vestment that women have traditionally put on for prayer. You know, a priest is not supposed to do any prayers in church without the epitrachili, the one around his right? That's the epitrachili. That's what it means, on his throat, basically, or his neck. It's neck, not throat. And so that's a way for him to constantly, we pray with that. And so the woman prays with the head covering. The father is considered to be a kind of spiritual armor, a helmet of salvation, to use the image of St. Paul, acting as a defense against scandal, suspicion, and envy. That's Tertullian in his defense, or St. Cyril of Alexandria. Sorry, I didn't move on. Men who are monks also wear a veil, a head covering that serves the same function. Many women notice that when they cover their heads, it contributes to sobriety, prayerfulness, and guarding the tongue. Somehow binding the head helps bind the senses, helps gird our loins for the business of prayer and worship. It aids us in the task of crying out to the Lord from the depths of our hearts. A head covering is not just an exterior custom. It has meaning for the soul. This is the case with everything connected to the church tradition. It is a tradition because it is full of meaning. Tradition helps the soul on its heavenward journey. It occurs to me reading this, it also, in our day and age, is a sign of total rebellion against the world. The last true rebellion, death to the world. This is the kind of rejection of the worldly mindset. Women, the true rebels, are the ones who rebel against the devil and his machinations and the spirit of the world and all of the lies about mankind, about their place, their role, their origins, their end. So much to rebel against in this society. It's just increasing every day, right? So one way that you show obedience to God and rebellion against the world that's been handed down to us, that marks you as a Christian, as one who submits to Christ, is the head covering. St. Paul, who maintained that Christians are not required to follow Jewish dietary laws, he fought against the Judaizers. That's what he's talking about. Judaizers wanted dietary laws. They wanted circumcision. He fought against that. So he's not some legalist. He didn't hold on to old customs that were insignificant or types that were fulfilled, right? St. Paul fought against those things as not necessary for the Gentiles. He did insist on the importance of continuing to follow the holy tradition of women covering their heads at prayer, as we read earlier, right? He was adamant. We have no other custom but for women to cover their heads. By the way, he says at prayer, but it's really it's also every day. Now today, we'll talk about this, I'm sure, in the questions. It's not done for the most part. There are a few women who do it, like the one we cited earlier, but it's pretty rare. And there's pastoral reasons why that might not be always possible, or maybe even not preferable in certain circumstances today. But we will talk about that. St. Paul, whom the fathers call the voice of Christ, asked the faithful to keep the traditions just as I deliver them to you. And then he speaks about the traditions of head coverings. Every man praying or prophesying, having his head covered, dishonors his head. Every woman who prays or prophesies with her head uncovered dishonors her head. And so, for nearly 2,000 years, women accepted this word of St. Paul with a simplicity and made it a beautiful part of their spiritual lives. Bishops, priests, deacons, and monks were not the only ones to have a special clothing for church. Every woman, every Orthodox woman, has that privilege as well. Now, notice we said privilege, not yoke, not a negative thing. It's a privilege. The priests don't see their coverings, all the variety of coverings, as some kind of burden. It's an honor for the priest to be clothed in those beautiful vestments, in that cassock, the blessed cassock that we wear. That's why it's always so jarring to see priests in collars. We've had thousands of years of men wearing cassocks. I said to the people when I was teaching this to my village, as older ladies, some young ladies, and I was saying to help them understand why it's beautiful for women to wear head coverings and dresses in church and all the rest. I said, let me ask you something. You're all kind of old style here, but they weren't really. They were kind of modernizing big time. Unfortunately, that's what's happening in Greece. I said, would you like your priest to walk around in his sweats and pants and, t-shirt? They all said, no, Father, no, we couldn't deal with that. I said, well, that's how I feel about seeing you in church without a head covering or walking around in pants. These things are not appropriate for a woman. They're dishonorable. It's an honor to be covered, to be beautifully dressed, to be adorned, and to honor your own self. It's a shame to dress like men and go around without your head covering and not be modest. So Think about that when women say, "Well, what?" It's the same. Men, priests, all of us have our own version of this. It's not something unique to women. Until the 50s, that's true. Until the 50s, this privilege was never seen as a form of sexist oppression, but rather as a tender expression of love for God and love for neighbor. It is only because of the war of secularism beginning in earnest in the 50s and 60s that women began to look at head covering not with the eyes of faith and a heart of piety and reverence, but instead to view them through the lens of a broken world, dominated by rights and the need for self-expression. A way of life in which freedom was not seen as freedom to keep the commandments of God and become godlike, but freedom from anyone and any institution telling us what to do. Total rebellion against, they had been burned, let's be honest. They had been burned by heterodoxy, a lot of it, right? Or fake and corrupted orthodoxy. In other words, a freedom leading to the will of man, not to the will of God, a freedom leading to pride, not humility, a freedom ending most often in anger, not in love. Glory to God, many women in our Holy Orthodox Church continue to follow this tradition, wearing head coverings or veils with care and diligence, according to St. John Chrysostom. That's a quote from St. John Chrysostom. I think I did not. Let's see. Here we are. Sorry. Glory to God. St. John Chrysostom would praise this expression of piety when he wrote, just as we, quote, wash our hands when we wish to pick up the Bible. Do we do that, by the way? Do we have utmost care for the scriptures? I don't think a lot of us do. It's hard to be vigilant, right? We're throughout the day. We've got Bibles. They're ubiquitous. They're everywhere. Bible back then would be very special, be unique. It would only be in the church or maybe in a few houses. Today we have Bibles printed in the millions. We've got Bibles on our iPads, So we've lost the sense of this specialness, this uniqueness, and this honor that we have to give. So he says, just as when you wash your hands when we wish to pick up the Bible, so a woman, if she is unveiled, immediately puts on a covering, displaying a token of her inner piety. Do you see that the outward appearance proclaims the inner piety? Unquote. Isn't that beautiful? Do you see that the outward appearance proclaims the inner piety? These things are inseparable. And we get this, when we tear them apart, we distort them and we destroy them. In other words, it is an outward expression of love for God and a sense of awe in his presence, which is the patristic definition of piety. Let's read that again. An outward expression of love for God and a sense of awe in his presence. One of the cornerstones of spiritual life, brothers and sisters, is that we're constantly in the presence of God. We're constantly mindful of God. We're watchful over our thoughts. We're constantly praying the Jesus prayer. That's what it means to have a vibrant spiritual life, to live in communion with God. So piety means to be also not just in his presence, but because we're always in his presence in a way, aren't we? He's everywhere present and fills all things, but to be in his presence in a sense of awe, with love. All right. So that's a part of this, the head covering. It's what it's also expressing as piety, the inward piety. And so the woman standing in church joins the ranks of the icons of holy women adorning our temples, wearing a headscarf or veil, beginning with our Mother and Heavenly Queen, Mary, full of grace, with whom the Lord is always present. It's a very simple way to just teach this, make this teaching clear to everyone. Just look around at the church, in the churches, at all the women martyrs and all the women saints, of course, the Mother of God. If you find 1 in 1,000, maybe 1 in 500 do not have a head covering, it would be some special reason. 99.9 of every saint who's a woman has her head covered. It was assumed. No one even questioned it until our 20th century. And that precious protecting veil of the Mother of God is the one head covering that we all desire to be under, men and women alike. The protecting veil, right? From the holy protection of the Mother of God and Constantinople and all that symbol is what we all seek to be under. Once when speaking about head coverings to an audience in Greece, a man responded, "It is unfair that women can have head coverings and we cannot. Why can't we have head coverings?" the man said. To that, the response is that there is no fair or unfair, just the glory to God who has made us all. Glory to thee, our God, glory to thee. See how rights, unfair, that whole mentality is all messed up. That's not how it works in church. It's all about God. It's about glory to God. That's what it's all about. There may be some who still do not desire to adopt this expression of pious love. Maybe some of you tonight here are saying, what's he talking about? My priest doesn't require that of me. Why is Father Peter going on about this? This is an old thing we don't do anymore, right? Maybe some of you have these objections. Listen to what he says now. Please don't feel judged. Don't feel excluded. My intent is to teach and to give, not to reprimand or belittle. Everything I say is because I care for you and want you to know and experience all the joy of Orthodox Christianity. That joy always begins with action in the world, a spiritual world where all is holy, all is Christ. Perhaps one can just try saying one's evening's prayers with a head covering put on unintentionally in the fear of God, and then doing the same without the covering, and then look inward and see how your soul feels towards God, for God, and even about the self itself. So there you go. You're not ready to wear head coverings in church. That's okay. Nobody does in your parish. They're all without head coverings, and you're embarrassed to go there. Okay, don't start there. Start in front of the icon corner. When you get up in the morning, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, you're by yourself, put on the head covering, pray with it. Do it for a couple of days, and then take it off again and see how you feel. That's what the bishop's telling us. Let piety, not logic, and certainly not the ways of this fallen world, be your guide. Let piety be your guide. Piety is something personal. It's how you make the sign of the cross. It's when you bow your head. It's the teary eyes that water when the heart is touched by the hand of God. I commend those who embrace this ancient practice and continue to embrace those who do not. That's a beautiful thing. I can almost feel like like this is something from like the ancient church or something. I commend those who embrace this ancient practice and continue to embrace those who do not. But it is a blessing. It is a gift from the Mother of God, offered not only to the women of this church, but to everyone, because we are one body. My piety affects your piety, and your piety affects mine. So you're not alone. When you do or do not do something with piety, it affects everybody around you. We're all in this together. Even as my prayer affects your prayer, and your prayer affects mine. I got to keep going. Sorry, I should have. There we go. Even as your prayer affects my prayer affects your prayer, and your prayer affects mine. This is the beauty of being in the church and of the church. We are children of the Mother of God. I say that and I just feel terrible for Protestants. It's so sad. They've been duped by the enemy of salvation to not honor the Mother of God. It's really tragic. We are children of the Mother of God, and we all have so much to be grateful for. May the most pure, most blessed, and most glorious Theotokos ever Virgin Mary bless all of you now and all the days of your lives. Amen. Thank you. What a wonderful homily. I'm so glad that he gave it to us to publish, and we were blessed to publish this. We're going to come out with even a better version of it, along with a lot of other booklets. Glory to God. All right. So let's put that away. There we go. I'm going to open up the questions. I'm going to leave it there. Let Bishop Alexei have the last word. All of you who are over at Orthodox Ethos, you're live with us. If you are signed up in our Telegram group, you can go over there right now and submit your questions, and we'll answer them. If you don't have Telegram, you can send an email right now to team@orthodoxethos.com, and one of our coworkers will forward it to me. So don't fret if you have a question over at orthodoxethos.com, because we don't have, unfortunately, functionality much for questions on that platform. You can do it in those two ways. Now, all of you here, feel free in Crowdcast to submit your questions. Let's start with one of them right now. All right, number one. Dear Father Blessed, would you have any thoughts on women who are wearing hats of various types in Orthodox Divine Liturgy rather than scarves, veils, which cover most of the head and hair? Thank you. I think that's a innovation of the last 100 years. I think it's something that happened in the Protestant world. I remember when I was growing up in the Anglican church, my father was an Anglican priest for 28 years, and my mother and others would wear these beautiful, large, decorative hats. It was very traditional in the Anglican, high church Anglicanism, but that's an innovation. And it can be, it can be kind of an attention grabber. And I don't think that that's the tradition in the Orthodox Church. I don't think so. I'm not, if they're doing it, I guess it's better than not having their head covered. But to me, it kind of does not express the spirit of what we just talked about: the submission, the humility, the modesty. It can become a distraction, and it can be something that's done in pride. Now you can say, well, I don't do it that way, or it's a very small hat. Okay. I mean, I'm not going to get into details, but that's just my take on it. And and the other thing is you're going to be different than the others who are wearing the headscarf. So why would we do that? Is there some reason we want to be different? We want to be, stand out. So I would be a little more reticent. Father Blessed, is there a recommended style of veil that is preferred for a woman to wear? When I was still going to the Roman Catholic Church, I wore a triangular lace veil. In my Orthodox parish, some women wear these lace veils. Others wear infinity veils. Not sure what that means. Some women wear scarves tied underneath their hair, and others wear what almost looks like a hijab. Hijab? Is that the name? Is it hijab? Anyway, in one case, I even saw a baseball cap. Okay. I still wear my black triangle lace veil. Can you provide any guidance? Thank you. These are kind of secondary issues, but I'll give you my take on it. And I'm not I'm not laying down the law here by any stretch of the imagination, but my experience. Right? So I can only speak from my experience. I think that there probably is different things around the world. I don't think it has to be the exact same. But I think if you look at the nuns, you look at the icons, look at the icons of the saints, look at the nuns, the sisters in the monasteries, and somewhat approach that as the standard. I think that's a good approach. It's a humble approach. You want to imitate the strugglers, the ascetics, the saints, right? How about that? That's what we try to do all throughout the church. We're trying to imitate the saints. So keep it simple. I think it's good to cover, as St. John Chrysostom said, and others, it's good to cover a lot. If you're going to do it right. Why? There's some people some women just put it and it just kind of hangs over here, and it's almost like there's no veil except a very small thing coming down. I think that if you're going to wear the veil, wear it and do it in imitation of the saints and the ascetics. That would be my 2 cents, right? And do something that's not going to differ much from the other women. This is not the time to go and make a statement. It's not a time to be different than everybody else. That's not what we're doing in church. We're trying to focus and get beyond the externals. The externals serve their purpose. Let's not stay there. I'm not saying you're doing that at all, Mary. I'm just saying this is a temptation. And let's focus, get that done, get it out of the way, so to speak. I mean, put it on and then focus and not deal with all that. I mean, there's a lot of things we do today that we can kind of superficially have it right, but essentially the spirit of it is still of the world. It's still this vanity. So make sure that's not happening. I'm not saying, Mary, you're doing that at all. I'm just saying the temptations here. So if you just look and keep it simple, look at the sisters, look at the saints, look at this and cover, and you're done. And probably you'd want 2 or 3 different ones, and you might want it different colors, perhaps for different feasts. That's fine. I don't think it's a big deal. But you don't want something that's screaming. It's like orange or yellow or I don't know, whatever. It's going to be something that's subdued. Priests traditionally never wore anything that wasn't dark. It was either dark black, which is the 90% of priests. So you might have in the Middle East where it's very hot, you might have a dark gray, or in Africa a gray, maybe a blue, but that's really not traditional. I think it's more modern. In any case, you see that you don't see priests walking around a yellow or blue or orange not blue, some violet. You don't do that, right? You don't call attention to yourself. So keep it simple, cover properly, imitate the saints, and I think you'll be fine. Hopefully that's a good answer. kind of extensive, probably not necessarily so extensive. Okay, I was asked once, this is from Madison Day. I was asked once at church why I had a head covering on, and for some reason I didn't know what the proper answer back to that was. Could you give me a guidance on how I answer back when people ask me? Well, right there in the scriptures, Madison. For the sake of the angels, for the sake of obedience, for the sake of imitation of Christ, for the sake of modesty. Everything we talked about tonight. Hopefully that was a good answer. The whole discussion, especially this pamphlet. By the way, in our Telegram group, this PDF is available for download if you're on our Telegram group. If you're not, you should be. Go get the Telegram app and then sign up for our Orthodox Ethos Uncut Mountain Press Telegram group. And maybe Justin can post the link for that, please, in the chat here, and then also in Telegram, people can share to their friends. Post that link so that people can sign up. But in the Telegram group, you can download this brochure, and right there you've got tons of things you can reply to people, beautiful things. I want to be like the Mother of God. I want to be like the saints. It's real simple. We can keep it simple anyway. We don't have to, but we can. Maria K. This is your question is, let's see, I cover my hair in church, and I have my 6-year-old daughters cover as well, twins. We attend a Greek Orthodox parish where maybe 5 other older women cover, but no younger women or girls do. My daughters complain about this, asking why they have to if no one else does. Yeah, that's very typical of young children. We understand that. They say they look weird because no other girls cover and only old women do. I've explained the reasons why we cover modesty, the example of Panagia and the women saints. Great. Yet when it comes time to get ready for church, they complain about it. I've thought about bringing them to a Russian or Georgian church. Maybe we could attend from time to time so they are around girls who cover their hair. I think that's a good idea. But these churches are significantly farther from where we live. Any suggestions, Father? So I think you need to surround your children generally with as many examples as possible, good examples. That's so important for all of us. It's one of the biggest problems in the mission field is where are their examples so they can imitate. We learn by imitation. We learn by examples. To be, impious or pious, to be, in the world or not of it, that's really what a lot of us are doing. And this is happening from the get-go, especially the first 5 years. That's how they learn. They look and they learn by observation. So it's very important. You've touched on a very important thing, is that I need good examples. And if I have good examples, like, here down in Arizona at the monastery, everybody's got their head covered. I mean, everybody. You can't go to the monastery without having your head covered, the women. So it's non-issue. Nobody talks about it. The women, everybody in the monastery, every woman, every daughter, every child has a female girl has her head covered. So it is extremely important, the example. I would recommend you go to those other parishes occasionally. I would recommend you read, the Lives of the Saints examples, and you just double down on that. Do not listen to the sirens. Do not imitate. I know you're not going to do that, but don't even think about going that route, right? Do not get riled up. Do not get shaken. You're the mother. You're the example. Double down on it and just say, no, that's all right, girls. Don't worry. And just move on. Just don't even bother to discuss it. Just say, that's the way it is. Well, glory to God, Mother of God. The saints were also rejected. Doesn't matter. We love them too. And move on. And that's how I would answer that. There's no, do not look back to Sodom and Gomorrah, right? Do not look back. Do not risk becoming a pillar of salt. Look to the saints. And this is a great practical example of how we should double down on these details. People say, it's not important. It's not special. It's not important. It's not, I can be a good Christian without these externals. Actually, here's where it matters. The Lord said, do both to the Pharisees, right? And here's where it matters a lot, because in the little things you're faithful, he says you're going to be faithful in the big things. So this is not a minor thing at all. St. John Chrysostom just said it. We just heard him say it. Not a minor matter at all. Michael Barber, Father Bless, could you also give a quick word how men should dress? I'm seeing Protestant influence trying to creep in, shorts, flip-flops. Well, this is just clearly worldly, clearly secularism. There's no doubt about it. I've always said, and I was raised this way, it wasn't hard for me, but I've always said, and everywhere I've gone, that to see the good examples set by others, your best clothing on church. Your best clothing. It doesn't matter if it's the same thing that everybody wears in the world in this case, right? In other words, tie and jacket and all that. Whatever it is, it doesn't have to be a tie, by the way. St. John Chrysostom didn't like ties. St. John of Shanghai didn't like ties. He didn't like the Russian men to have ties. But you put a nice jacket on, you put a dress shirt, you put dress pants, you put your nice shoes, the stuff that shows that you respect yourself, the place. You're not going down to the sea. You're not going down to the surfing. I mean, the clothing is symbolic. It shows our disposition. It shows what we're doing. It expresses the inner piety, as St. John Chrysostom says. So it's very important. And so obviously we're not going to take that whole laxity and laziness, and it doesn't matter, this whole destruction of the norms that came in the 60s and 70s in America. It's anathema because it affects the soul, right? It undermines the soul's piety. It's not a minor thing. So I think you really, without being preachy, teachy, and bullying, God help you, do what you need to do. If you have the leeway, let's say, and people listen to you, and you can kind of be an older father or brother or something, and they'll listen to you, tell them, admonish them with love and care, and say, this is what we do here. Explain it very lovingly and simply, and encourage people. But do not, that's clear, right? Those things, can you imagine? I mean, I guess it's imaginable today. Can you imagine women wear, tiny skirts and men come in with shorts to church? Can you imagine that? I mean, maybe that's happening somewhere. God help us if it is. It's just it's so unimpressive and so not serious, I would say. Like, are you serious? Where are you going? I thought you were going to heaven. You go to heaven, you put your best clothes on, you're modest, you're covered, you're not attracting attention. It's different than the rest of the week. It's different than the activities you're going on throughout your life. This is a special place. Anyway, Alexander Union, dear Father, if the church we are in right now, OCA, brings back masks and other restrictions, is it proper stewardship to withhold the pledge and give somewhere else? I don't know if I would do that immediately, but I would. I think whatever we do needs to be step by step, and it needs to be done with love and care. And if they're doubling down on something which is, delusional, heretical, whatever it might be, if we're talking about, I don't know what they're going to do there. They're going to go to the extreme of multiple spoons. Are they going to shut down the church again? Just whatever the degree and the severity, I guess you need to act accordingly, but do not go along with it, obviously. But I would say step by step, and don't immediately, go ballistic. So what's the first thing you would do? You would, with respect, approach the priest. He might not listen. He maybe has to be obedient to the bishop. And you would, say it with love and care, I can't participate in this. And then, step by step, and just increase, as it were, up the ante, as it were, of I'm not participating, I'm not supporting. And, leave the door open always with love and compassion, but don't compromise on these. We've gone through this 1,000 times. I don't need to repeat it. Don't compromise on these matters. Matthew, Father bless, when I see my icon of the Theotokos, I think to myself, I've never seen a more beautiful lady in my life. Indeed. Her gentleness, her true femininity, her piety, her holiness radiates. Do you have an icon style of the Theotokos that's dear to you? And if so, which one? Well, this icon that you see here on this little pamphlet, let's see if you can get that. Can you guys see that? That's right behind me. That's the one on the wall I've shown to you before. That's the Mother of God from the Kiku Monastery in Cyprus. It's also very similar to the Panagia Dexia, the Mother of God on the right, which is a famous icon in Thessaloniki. That in the church, Panagia Dexia, that's where I was married. And so it's very dear to us. That's the iconography. That's the icon, these icons that we're especially drawn to. I don't know what else to tell you. There's so many. Athenite icons are endless. They're so beautiful. There's so many. But Odigitria, Panagia Dexia, Parimithia on Mount Athos at Batupedi Monastery is a beautiful. The Viran icon of Mother of God, Portaitisa. These are all icons that are ubiquitous in Greece and on Mount Athos. Andrew John Alsop has a question. Why is there a difference between Christians and Jews regarding head coverings when before God we both worship God? Well, first of all, there's a lot to unpack here. Before I get to the question of whether we both worship God, that's an interesting statement you made. I think we need to unpack that. What does that mean? Today's Judaism is not the Judaism of the time of our Lord at all. It's gone through many changes, and it's clearly dominated by the Talmud and the traditions of the fathers, and the occult, essentially, that came out of Babylonian Judaism and other things. There's a lot we could talk about, but the kinds of things that somebody like Madonna is involved in, all that darkness never was a part of the practice of the Jewish people, at least the faithful ones, in the time of our Lord. So I can't tell you why and what they're doing today and why they're doing it. It's not really, never really studied it, never really dealt with it. So, but it's certainly not because we worship the same God. Now, what you say, we worship the same God? Well, but they don't worship the Trinity. They don't worship Jesus Christ. They blaspheme him. So what do you mean we worship God? You mean we worship that which we believe to be God? They're not worshiping God, because they would be worshiping the Holy Trinity and Jesus Christ, right? You say, well, they're worshiping him without understanding him. No, we call upon him. We call him by his name. We speak to him in particularly who he is. The fact that they did not recognize Jesus Christ, the fact that they rejected the Holy Trinity, means that they rejected the same God of the Old Testament that they once were faithful to. They walked away from the one God when they rejected Jesus Christ. They walked away from the one God when they refused the Holy Trinity. So it's mistaken to think that we worship the same God with anyone who rejects the Trinity and, of course, Jesus Christ. They worship what they think is God. They worship, the scriptures are fairly clear. All the gods of the nations are idols, it says. It does not say they all worship the God, but they just don't know it. Nobody said that in scripture. There's no scriptural witness to say, well, they worship. Now, St. Paul does speak about the Jews saying, well, you have the unknown God. And, that was a rhetorical device to try to bring them to open themselves up to Christ. I don't think he was making some kind of confession of faith about the pagans that they worship the one God. So, yeah. So I think that it's their distortion and their total distortion and distance from the God, the one God of the Old and New Testament, and the traditions and the life of the early church. That's what would be behind their innovations. Father Bless, what's the difference between head coverings for Christians versus Muslims? I'm just joining, so I'm not sure you answer this. Okay, Jacob, no worries. But definitely sit down and listen to the whole talk, or at least get this and read it from Bishop Alexei, right? This is available through our, downloaded from our Telegram group. I guess Justin, we should also bring it over to Patreon and download it in Patreon. Why not? We should make it available to everybody in Patreon and everybody on Orthodox Ethos. I just realized that. Why haven't we should do that? We'll do that shortly. This is this little PDF. So read that. But yeah, the difference is the meaning. The difference is who it's going to and who it's honoring, right? The head covering is a way to honor and submit ourselves to Christ and to be obedient to God. So that's not happening among the Muslims. They've received certain external traditions, and they're doing it in a similar way. So there's a basic external similarity, obviously, because head coverings are similar no matter who's wearing them. That was the case in the ancient world, by the way. Pagans wore head coverings. Christians, Jews, everybody did. So this is the thing when people, I'm going to look like a Muslim. That's only because the apostasy of the world today. That's our ignorance that leads us to think we're going to be looking like Muslims. I know that typical Protestant, papal Protestant is going to say, why is somebody wearing head covering? They must be a Muslim. That's just gross, utter ignorance and an apostasy from the common tradition, not just of Christians, but of pretty much everybody in the ancient world. And that, again, didn't evaporate until the 20th century. So I don't know. This is the path, the road of being a Christian in this day and age when there's such apostasy. We have the cross of being misunderstood, being rejected, being mocked by the world, but it's how it always was, right? And to one degree or another, kind of how it always was, at least off and on. Okay, so I see the questions have evaporated. I've answered all of them here in yes, you're right about that, Matthew. Muslims look like Orthodox, not the other way around. They came after us. Okay, I've answered all the questions. I don't see any other questions anywhere else unless Justin has a few that he wants to pop in from Telegram. I guess I could go to Telegram and see if anybody's got any questions there. If not, we can call it a night unless you have some more questions. Let me see what we got over here in Telegram. Where is it? Okay, yeah, I don't see any questions there either. All right. So let me make some announcements. Oh, there's two more questions. As always happens. I stop and then they come flying in. Remind me to make some announcements before we head out. Yeah, we can always, we need a poll. Yeah, of course. Tina has a question. Father, a common response from those resistant to these practices. Man, I'm thirsty. I forgot to bring water. Father, a common response from those resistant to these practices is that enforcement of such is legalism. The idea being that God is more concerned with our hearts than externals. This is always this false opposition between externals and the heart, as if the internal and external are not one. The human being is both physical and spiritual. He's internal and external. There's no opposition here. And if what they're saying was the case, then St. Paul and St. John Chrysostom and St. Augustine and all these other saints who took it they're all clueless. They're all legalists. This is just comical. It's comical. You tell them, do you know? But by what you're saying, that means that the saints, the Apostle Paul, St. John Chrysostom, they were legalists. If that's how it is, you're dividing the man, the human being. You're dividing him up, and you're the legalist actually, because you're looking at the external only. We're saying the external and the heart are one. St. John Chrysostom, what did he say? Let's read it again. He said, do you see that the outward appearance proclaims the inner piety? There you go. This quote St. John Chrysostom. The outward appearance proclaims the inner piety. It's not either or, it's both and. Tina goes on. The same extends to matters like reception of heterodox via baptism. Again, form, essence, it's all one. They're not opposed. They matter. The symbol, it is very similar to that matter, actually. And it's interesting. You can see again and again and again repeated across the board this same lie of the enemy. It doesn't matter how they're baptized. It doesn't matter if you wear head coverings. It doesn't matter if you come in shorts. Nothing matters. Nothing matters. Well, actually, that's a stance of impiety that you represent an impious perspective and outlook. When you say nothing matters, it doesn't matter. It's all just externals. All that matters is love, 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 love. You know what? That's not love. You don't have love and zeal for the law of God, for the commandments of God, for the traditions of the Holy Fathers. That's not love. That's not love. So it's a total lie. It's a total lie and delusion. What we do in baptism, what the women covering their head and the priest covering his and the vestments, all these things are expressing an internal reality and they're symbolizing the truth. We go 3 times in the water because we're dying. We have to be immersed in the water. That's not only a type, this is the solution of our sacramental theology in Protestantism. We're all suffering under these delusions. What we do in the body and blood, the bread and wine becoming the body and blood, the baptism, all these things express a spiritual reality. And when we depart from them, we lose, we depart. We show ourselves as unfaithful. We undermine, if not totally disturb, the synergy, right? We walk away from faithfulness. Why don't you just do it? Submit yourself and say, that's what the Lord said. That's what we're going to do. No, it doesn't. You're a legalist. No, you're proud. You're arrogant. You don't want to submit to Christ. That's what's really at stake here, right? All right. I think I answered that. Did I answer that? Anybody want to? Should we take a poll if I answered that? How many people here for the first time? All right, we can do that. Caesar's got a poll. He's got another one. How many women here wear veil in church or outside church? Okay. Those are, we can anonymously do that. People don't have to feel like they're, on the spot. Last question before we go to the Caesar polls. Father Peter Bless, you mentioned pastoral reasons not to cover in day-to-day life. Could you explain? Oh, that's good. Thank you very much, Diane. I'm glad you responded. Now, what I mean is this. The way society has developed, you're in California or whatever, right? Nobody wears a veil, even in church, right? So you start wearing it in church, and then you think, I want to be totally obedient. I want to wear it throughout the day. Well, because of the totally apostate and reality of the world around you, the implications today to wear a head covering are not exactly the same as they would have been 50, 100, 200 years ago. Number one. Number two, there will be a spiritual struggle to do this. Why? Because you'll have to battle with thoughts. You'll have to battle with perhaps people rejecting you. You'll have to battle with maybe your husband being upset because my wife is like a Muslim. There's a lot of things to consider. Are you spiritually ready for that? Can you take that on? Is your husband going to support you? These are the kind of pastoral questions that a priest would sit down and talk to their spiritual daughter about. In and of itself, desiring to wear the veil is a blessed thing, but everything has to be done in an Orthodox manner. It's not just what we do; it's how we do it. And so, in this case, you have to consider the context, consider the community, and maybe even still, the conclusion will be, well, whatever the price, my conscience is saying I want to wear this veil because that's what, St. Paul said. I want to be obedient to St. Paul. There are people like that. I know people in this community down in Arizona, they wear a veil night and day. In the old country still, a lot of people, older ladies, wear the veil night and day in the villages. So it's still around in the Christian world, but I would just say that, I would want to be really ready for that, because in some places and times and communities, it's going to be a big struggle to do something which, unfortunately, it should have been the norm, but it's totally not. It's been rejected. Does that make sense? Let me know, Diane, that I answered your question. Yeah, love to hear if Diane, if I answered your question. It's a good question. Let me know. So we have a poll here. I'm just going to cut and paste from the poll master, Mr. Caesar, and here you go. Question: how many women here today wear the veil, the head covering, in church or outside of church? And so option one is, I guess, both. Option two is in church. Option three is neither. Am I missing any options? We could put option four, sometimes in church, struggling to do more. I don't know. Whatever. Just want to give everybody. All right. So that's created. So all of our women today, you can answer that if you'd like. You did. Okay. Thank you, Diana. I'm glad you told me that I answered your question. How many people here today for the first time? Let's get because we got today, first time ever, we've opened it up to anybody just to join us. And so we would like to know, I am a first timer. Yay. I guess that's all I need. If you are a first timer, give us, I got it. Do I need to do two? I guess I give another. I have to give two options. So I have watched online a lot. First time here. I'm a first timer for OE generally. Yeah, maybe that's what we'll do. So there's two kinds of first timers. First timers for OE, first timers for here. So that's there now. You can answer that poll. And then we've got, I think we have one more poll from the poll master. No, that's it. Okay, so we've answered that. Start answering, answered. Start answering, answered. One more question from Tina. Tina says, Father, since so many have a misconstrued idea of legalism, could you properly explain what it is? Okay, just a moment, though. Before I do that, Tina, I want to make sure I'm not missing anything here in you. Nico, let us know in the poll, right? So the poll is on the right hand here, a little question mark. It's the right hand Q&A bar, right? Can you see that? Go over there and answer the poll for us, and that'll be nice to be able to see that. No problem, Nancy. I wear a veil in church, and when praying at home, does that count as both? I can put that in there. Probably not, because we're talking about the second, Deborah, the second answer was, I guess, in public is what was meant. So why don't where is it? How do I get there? Edit. Okay, so I'm going to make a third thing, and you can change your in church and at home. Where did it go? In church and at home, not public. Okay, so the other one is actually public. That was the idea there. Yeah. Okay, so I think that's now there. And anybody who has that other option, where did it go? What? I thought I added it, and now I see that it's not there. Why? Both in church, neither, sometimes in church. Okay, well, I don't know what happened. I have to do it again. In church. What's it doing? It's really weird. Look at this. Can't get in church plus at home. Not public. Okay. Save. It doesn't allow me to do it. It's all right. It doesn't allow me to do it. I've done it twice, and it just doesn't allow me to do it. So that's all right. Just answer in church probably in that case, even though you do it at home. All right, going back to Tina's, I don't know what the problem was. Going back to Tina's question, legalism. What is legalism? Legalism is the keeping of the type, the externals, just being oblivious or ignorant of or disregarding the function of the type, the external, and how it leads us to the internal, how they play together. It's a lack of love. It's a lack of desire for the exactitude of the gospel and fulfilling the law of God in its totality, in its spirit. Like it's not It's not a spiritual life at all. It's just we do this because that's what they told us to do, and we do it. Like there's no meaning. There's no sense of why am I doing what I'm doing. That's a legalism. It's a fanaticism or dedication to the law, the letter of the law, without an understanding of the meaning and the purpose and where it's all meant to lead us and guide us. I think that's one way you could do it. All right. Another question from from Matthew. Matthew says, to balance out, may we also speak of men who don't wear long sleeves? Sometimes men even wear shorts. I think we kind of addressed that. You go with your best. You don't go with shorts. Shorts just do not have a place there, of course. Just like short dresses wouldn't have a place. It's kind of a no-brainer, isn't it? I can't imagine people going to church in shorts. What are they doing? What is going through their head? And if you don't do it, your children shouldn't do it either. I just don't understand. There's no aesthetic. Like aesthetically, forget piety. Just aesthetically, don't you realize that doesn't make any sense in that? It's a holy place. There's icons. There's this. There's that. And you're there in shorts. Now, people might think, well, shorts are not informal. Of course they are. Where did we get this idea that shorts are not are? Do you go to any? Would you go to the king, the president? You're going to the president's, banquet. You're going to the White House. You're going to, some really important person. Would you go in shorts? No, you wouldn't go in shorts unless there's a total degradation of the person who's supposed to be honored, and he could care less. But that's not the norm. That's not what we do. All right. Ali Joy says, in climates where coverings are just too hot, is an Aunt Jemima style wrap inappropriate? Aunt Jemima style. Going like all the way around. Is that what that means? I'm mixed race and do wear my hair like that a lot. Okay. I'm not really understanding the question. I think it was, and I don't want to answer it wrong, so that's why I'm not sure how to respond to this. But I think that there's some leeway in terms of style, but I don't think we want to. I don't know. I don't think we want to fulfill the virtue of modesty. So if this means we're like stripping down to, a shell of what it means to be modest, I don't know if that's going to be virtuous. I just think that we want to focus on virtues. So, I'm here. The monks are down here in Arizona, and we've had 2 months of 110, 20 degrees. None of them even imagine I'm going to take my cassock off or my hat off or my soda. So nobody even thinks like that, right? Because it's just not, it doesn't matter. It's an opportunity to, I'm not sure you're getting at that. I'm not sure what you're getting at. That's why I don't know how to answer your question. Is it a question of heat? Like we're just bogged down by the heat. And so it just becomes like you're sweating. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. I mean, in Africa, I'm pretty sure the pictures I've seen of Father Cosmas and all his missionary work in Congo, pretty sure they're all wearing head coverings, and it's real hot. In fact, they've got big dresses, bright, beautiful, flowery dresses that are covering their whole body. And traditional societies, the mind doesn't even go there. Like I'm gonna jettison the clothes. It would be I think unheard of. So I don't know how to answer your questions because I'm not sure if I understood it, but hopefully something I said helped. Okay, there's tons of comments here that one could comment on, but there's way too many for me to get to, so I'm not sure if I should even begin. There does need to be a lot of catechism on this, right? A lot of catechism on this. Priests need to teach this. This is why I love this homily is so beautiful. It's pastoral. It's true. It's inspiring. We need this all over the Orthodox Church. People need to be inspired to follow and imitate the saints, and first of all, the Mother of God. That's why this is an important topic for women and for men. To imitate in the same way for them that zeal for piety that they see in the women. Okay. Let's see the polls. And then I think we're going to call it. It's almost 2 hours. I don't see any other questions. And let me see. I want to make some announcements before we close out. So how many women here wear a veil in the church and outside the church? Both, the answer was 4.17%. That's just, I guess, one person. I think there were more votes before because some women wear them in house as well when they pray, which is great. I mean, that's understandable that it would be considered both. In church, 79% of the women who voted here tonight say they wear the head covering in church. And then 8% said neither. And then 8% said sometimes in church, struggling to do more. Okay. So the vast majority of the women here tonight apparently have already heard this message and embraced it, and that's wonderful. How many people here for the first time? And we have 4 people here who've watched a lot online, but first time here. And then 0 people who are first timers generally. Everybody's done some watching online, probably YouTube, I'm guessing. Let me make some announcements, and we'll see if there's anything else people want to discuss or question. Any questions? I think we've posted a lot of the links, and we're going to post the PDF in short order. We're going to be coming together tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern, Wednesday, tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific time, live streaming with DPH. That's David Patrick Hari, the Eternal Church of the Eternal Logos. I don't know if anybody saw that, but he did a live stream today answering 2 or 3 articles, which are basically hit pieces on him and myself and others from very extreme, extremists who are bringing in the secularism and feminism and all the isms, unfortunately, into the church, and they're attacking orthodoxy. I don't know how to describe it. They're just, some of them are outright lies. Some of them are just totally misleading, and some of it is just a caricature of what is really happening. It's really, really sad. So today there was a live stream. Wasn't it today, Alexander? It was yesterday. There was a live stream over at the Church of the Eternal Logos, which is not a church. It's just a title for his podcast. Yeah, and he did a pretty good job, and he had a discussion at the end with some guests, which was good. In any case, I'll be on that tomorrow. We're talking about the new book, and we're basically just going to review the book, I guess, and talk about, take questions. And then on Thursday, we'll be back here for question and answer session. And coming up next week, I'm expecting to have several podcasts lined up. I've got an interview that somebody wants to do with me. I've got another interview somebody wants to do with me. These are different online podcasters. And there was one more, which I can't remember right now. So those will be coming out. You keep your eye peeled for that. And that's the immediate schedule for Orthodox Ethos Online. And we have working on our books, which are coming out in September, October, November, 3 new books. And we've got some, during the live stream tomorrow, this is important for everybody who's not bought the book or hasn't. Is it Justin, are we giving a discount code for anything on the site, or is it just for the book on baptism? But in any case, during the live stream tomorrow, you can go from the live stream to Uncut Mountain Press and get a discount of, what is the discount? Can you help me out, Justin? What's the discount? Is it 15% of everything on Uncut Mountain Press? That's tomorrow during the live stream. Despina, the conference is still being worked out. It's going to be probably late February, unfortunately. So Despina, you'll get an announcement as soon as we can make it, but we are still doubling down. We're going to do the conference, but it's going to be late February. I'm looking very much looking forward to announcing that. Very much looking forward to getting that all finalized, but it's so hard sometimes to nail it down. Okay, so there it is. Justin says it's on anything at Uncut Mountain Press. You get free shipping on all items. That's the discount. So free shipping on all items, Uncut Mountain Press, tomorrow during the live stream. During the live stream tomorrow, 2 to 4, probably be 2 hours, 3 hours. I don't know how long we're going to go. 2 hours live stream. You got to go to his live stream, Church of the Eternal Logos, DPH, David Patrick Harry. Go there, watch. You'll get the code, and then you can go and order the book and get free shipping on everything. That's just a way to, it's a way to help people get the books. It's a way to kind of keep interest. Hopefully it helps to get the word out as well. Anything else? We got one more question. If you got other questions you want to ask about, you can shoot away. Your opportunity before we hang up here in a few moments here, a few minutes. We'll put some chanting on for everybody. Some beautiful Byzantine chant from Athonite chant. Anastasia has a question. In relation to young, early teenage, unmarried girls wearing a HUD covering, is there a pushback from them and their spiritual fathers who aren't in favor of it? What do you do as a parent? Thank you. Well, I don't think virtue and humility and submission can be forced on anybody. It's not going to work. It's going to backfire. You've got to present the case, inspire people, give them the lives of the saints, and they've got to want it. Otherwise, it's not going to work. We're not, God's not interested in, again, this would be a legalism. Like, you must do it no matter what, even if you hate it. I mean, that's not going to work, right? So that's why it's so important to raise the children from a young age, and they live this experience before they get to their teenage or their young adult ages, and they can say, I'm not interested. And really, your pedagogy is going to change, right? Up until a certain age, 10, the father, the mother, or 12, 15, depends on the child. The father, the mother can expect and teach and pedagogically correct. But the older they get, the more they're going to have to start living on their own free will, according to their own understanding. I mean, certainly after they leave the house, there's going to be a different pedagogy. You're not going to change your views. You're not going to change your stances, but you're not going to pedagogically, approach the child in the same way. If you're interested in how you should go deeper on that and how it changes, I highly recommend you read Saint Porphyrios. Saint Porphyrios, his teachings on this, I guess they're found in, a lot of it's just online in different excerpts, but I don't know, because I read it in Greek. I don't know what's in English, actually. But I would find that, and that would be helpful to you. How do you deal with that? But God's not interested in. He's not interested in just fulfilling external empty laws, and the heart is rebelling. That's not good. You got to give the heart. You got to love it. We got to inspire people to love Christ and give examples of love. Swan Dog, am I saying the weird word? I feel like I'm not saying your name right. So Juan Dong, that's what I would say, but maybe I'm all wrong. Tell me. Father Peter, when will you start the new lessons in the Book of Revelation? Well, they're scheduled for September. If you go over there to Crowdcast, if you're in Crowdcast and you go and you click on that lecture series, it's scheduled to start in September, but it's not in my hands entirely. I can't really explain the whole dynamic here, but I have to wait and see. But God willing, in a few weeks, we'll see. I'll keep you posted. I really want to start. It's not because I don't want to start, believe me. I really want to start. I'm really tired of waiting. I want to go back to those lectures. So very important. I love doing those lectures. They're so inspiring. And I'm really sad I can't do them, but there's just certain things that I have to be patient about and obedient. I have to be obedient. And that's how it is. Okay. There you go, John. I'm glad you mentioned it. Father Cosmas, Orthodox Talks, has hours of saints on teaching children. Go to that. Thank you, John H. John H. Good call. Maybe you got some links Who can go get some links right now and post them in the chat to get people over to Father Gozmas on those lectures for children? That would be a good thing. It'd be a little missionary there. By the way, we had some technical issues with shipping overseas that we didn't realize were going on our site, and I think those are all fixed now. And hopefully, it'll be much easier for people to do that. If you're in Australia, you're in the UK, you're in Greece. I'm hoping that now the Shopify setup, it's kind of complicated apparently in some places. It's not quite clear, and so we've made some changes, and hopefully that'll be much easier. You got free shipping on all downloads. That's true, Michael. Yeah, there you go. You got, if you're getting ebooks, this probably won't matter tomorrow. There's one more question. Let's see who it's from. Paraskivi. Is it only appropriate for Orthodox women to wear long skirts only in public? Let's see. The double only is confusing to me, Paraskivi. Are you saying, do you want to say that can you not wear long skirts at home? Is that what you want to say? Can you put a comment under your question or edit your question? Are you asking whether it's okay just to wear long skirts or whatever dress in public, but when you're at home to wear short skirts? Or is that what, these are the kind of pastoral questions I try to avoid sometimes because I feel like I want to help you, but I don't want to micromanage people. I don't like I'm not a micromanager. I'm not your spiritual father. I can try to help you. There's so many people who don't have spiritual fathers, so I feel like I need to answer. At the same time, I don't want to get in between you and your spiritual father. But anyway, is that your question, Partiskivi? Help me out. I want to make sure I understand your question. Thank you, John. You got some great those links from Matthew and John in the. Can we post those, Justin? If you're here, Justin, post those over on our Telegram channel. Okay, I have now a picture from Juliana that shows Aunt Jemima, and her head covering is like very tight. I guess I don't know how to describe it. I guess I could share this on. It's funny. I never thought about this. So let me put Aunt Jemima on the screen just so everybody knows what we're talking about. Let's see if I can get it up here. Where are you, Aunt Jemima? There she is. So, you guys ready for Aunt Jemima? There she is. That's Aunt Jemima. So the question was about the Aunt Jemima. That's fine. I don't see any people do that. Sure. There's those kind of head coverings. There's head coverings that come underneath. That's the more common. The more common is to come underneath and even tie in the back. I've seen that, but that's fine as far as I know. There she is. Thank you, Aunt Jemima. All right. As part of given me more details about what she wants to ask. There she is. I was told by many elderly faithful women, they say it's a sin. Women should always wear long skirts. Okay, but again, you didn't specify. At home, you're saying it's not necessary to wear. Is that what you're saying? That you're asking in public? Maybe you're asking in public, you have to wear long skirts. Well, look, the older women are basically telling you what they received. So that's kind of important, isn't it? And secondly, let's think about the Mother of God. Let's think about the saints. Do you think they went around in short skirts? I don't think so. This is the best. For me, this is the best way to answer some of these questions. We can get into all kinds of the best way. This is how saints really think. They're very simple. Read the lives of the saints. You'll see. The Mother of God, she did this, I did that. End of discussion. I don't talk about it anymore. I don't think about it anymore. I just do it. That kind of dedication, right? That kind of dedication to what we want to be. We want to be like. So these kind of things, we just crucify our intellect. We just go deeper. We don't think about them. We go on. That's the best way to deal with it, in my opinion. But I'm not your spiritual father. So I'm not gonna, this is not you don't have to listen to me, but that's how I would understand that. Yeah, it's a good way to approach it. It's not you need good examples. Don't make it a big issue. Don't over fixate on it. Don't get upset. I mean, just make it almost in the background, right? It's the background, these things. The more we focus on it, the more we're still struggling with it shows we're kind of spiritually still struggling with egotism. If we can just get these things in the background, just establish what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. This is our typicon. This is how we're going to do it. This is the norm. I want to imitate the saints. And then move on. The more we can do that, the quicker I think that's going to be the best for us. Does that make sense? We need to do audio books. Matthew is saying a truth there. Audio readings books are very good because the books can be expensive. It's a blessing. I know we need to get on it. Justin, John, and all of the Orthodox team here, we need to get on audio books. I feel like so much to do, so little time. Do you realize that they're cooking up more COVID in the fall? You paying attention? There's rumors. It's like rumors of wars, rumors of wars. It's rumors of COVIDism again coming. They're floating it. Hopefully it'll be at least pushed back to October. I've got some traveling I'm doing in September. I hope we can avoid that. But whatever it is, it is. Here it comes. We're going to be tested. We'll see what happens this time around. Hopefully it's a bunch of nonsense. Hopefully it's just rumors, but we'll see. It's usually how it starts. All right. Let's see. The questions just keep coming. I'm going to have to cut them off. Oh, there she is. Okay, Butterskivy. God bless you, Butterskivy. All right. I'm going to cut them off. We're going to wrap it up for tonight. And God bless you all. Good struggles to you. We'll see you tomorrow if you're going to round two. round two. Oh, round two COVIDism. Yeah, that's true. We'll see you tomorrow again at 2 p.m. Eastern, DPH. Church of the Eternal Logos till Thursday night, normal time, question and answer. And then we'll be coming next week with a lot of other podcasts and discussions of the book mostly. It's been good. God bless you. God keep you. Pray for us. And we're going to leave you with some beautiful chanting from Mount Athos. And wish you a good evening. Thank you for joining us.